Roberts Robinson Chevrolet Buick GMC presents Kevin Kietzman Has Issues. Shop, click, drive at robertsrobinson.com.
All right, it's the weekend edition of Kevin Kietzman Has Issues. I'm Spencer Kietzman here to give us a sort of instant reaction on not only what we saw in the NFL today. I wanted to wait until later today to put this out just because I wanted to see where the AFC would shape up with a few things, because obviously if you're Kansas City right now and you're the Chiefs, you didn't like what you saw today. It was sloppy. There is no question about that. The Chiefs made some mistakes, had some turnovers, fumbled a punt, led to Denver points. Luckily, the Broncos just aren't that good, and the Chiefs were able to take control of that game in the fourth quarter and seal the deal to keep Kansas City alive for that number one seed. So, if you're listening to this on Monday, which I think a lot of you might, the Bengals and Bills game is absolutely huge. And then, of course, the Chiefs have to win next week. So there's almost no chance of Kansas City sitting anybody in the final week of the year, resting guys, because one way or another, Buffalo's got another game. Even if they win, even if they beat the Bengals, there's still obviously a chance that they could lose to end the season, and then the Chiefs could get that number one spot. I mean, there's multiple scenarios. Cincinnati's still involved in this thing. They could actually be the 1 or the 5. I mean, they haven't wrapped up their division. Baltimore is still alive in that division. So the AFC, the top of the AFC right now, is really shaping out to be a lot of fun. There's going to be some drama, and everybody in Kansas City will have their eyes on the Bengals and Bills tomorrow night. That is an absolutely huge game for 3 different teams. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be a fun one, guys. So we're going to jump right into it here in just a minute. My buddy Mitch Vareldzis is going to join us. He works with, I guess I technically still work at 98.7 Arizona Sports here. He is the producer of the afternoon show. He hosts an evening and a weekend show on 98.7 here in Phoenix. He's a great guy. I used to do a Saturday show with him, had a lot of fun, and I think this is the first time I brought him on. So I called him up today, just said, hey, you want to talk some football? He's also from Colorado, so kind of wanted to get his perspective on the Broncos and that train wreck and what they're going to do this offseason to try to fix that train wreck. And I'll also get into the Kansas State game. Obviously, that was disappointing. Kansas State had a great year, won the Big 12. Alabama was just obviously too much to handle. So we'll talk a little college football as well on this podcast. I'm looking forward to getting into it. It's brought to you by Cornerstone Property Management. They are a full-service company, and GW Weld has a lot of properties. And the best thing about them now is I've started pushing this lately when talking about Cornerstone Property Management. They'll buy your property. If you just inherited something and you really don't know what to do with it, they'll make you an offer. They'll take it off your hands and, buy your house, rental property, whatever you've got. GW got into the business because he was just tired of his properties being mismanaged while he was still working his full-time job, and just got into business himself. He just wanted to do it and do it right. Not one single client has ever left Cornerstone Property Management ever. That is awesome. They manage hundreds of properties with hands-on care in finding excellent tenants. That's always a pain, right? Finding the right renter. They'll take care of that for you. Maintaining the property and collecting rent. They do it all. If you're if you don't know what to do with your rental home, you can call and get a quote. If you want to rent it out, they'll take care of it. The website is homewithcornerstone.com. You can get a free quote there. Online at homewithcornerstone.com. Let the rental work for you. Also brought to you by Earth Effects Outdoor Living. It's time to jump on board with Earth Effects Outdoor Living. You can have the outdoor lifestyle at your home that you've always dreamed of. Go to the website. It's eeoutdoor.com. You'll find a lot of pictures of beautiful projects they've done for homes and businesses across the Kansas City area. They're also a full landscape service as well, so they can take care of your yard. They specialize in hardscapes, those quality of life projects like fire pits, outdoor kitchens, bars, patios, water features, all kinds of cool stuff. They also specialize in outdoor lighting. This is becoming a huge thing. They can really light up your yard, your patio, your deck, whatever it is, with outdoor lighting, and it's going to look great. I know my dad's been talking with Daniel Hanks. I think they're going to do something coming up shortly. Daniel has over 25 years of experience in this industry. He's absolutely fantastic. He treats every project like it's his own house. Earth Effects is a part of the family here at Kevin Kietzman Has Issues, so you can expect honesty, integrity, and great conservative values. Contact Earth Effects Outdoor Living. It's eeoutdoor.com. You can get a free consultation. They'll take a look at what you've got, see what they can do for you. You can give them a call. It's 816-478-7700. That's 816-478-7700. You can also connect with them on Facebook and see what they've done there as well. Earth Effects Outdoor Living. Build your dream in your backyard with Earth Effects Outdoor Living. All right, on to some football. The Chiefs were sloppy today. They, came out struggling. The Chiefs haven't had a whole lot of great fast starts this year. I was thinking about that today while I was watching this game. They just haven't had near as many as they have in previous years, where they just come out against bad teams and blow the doors off right away. They've kind of messed around with some of these lesser opponents recently and, taking it into the fourth quarter where they've got a game. But they got the win. Kansas City's now 13-3. And if the Chiefs win next week against the Raiders, which you would hope they would, that game's on the road, though. They do go to Vegas to close out the season with the Raiders, who aren't playing for anything. I mean, it's a meaningless game for the Raiders at this point, and Derek Carr's been benched. So, I mean, they looked pretty good today against San Francisco, but the Chiefs just I don't see them struggling with the Raiders in this one. And it's a game that Kansas City's going to need to win. Because you're fighting for that number one spot. So if Buffalo drops a game and Kansas City wins next week, guess what? The playoffs go fully through Arrowhead Stadium once again, which is the end goal. You want to have that home field advantage. That's going to be very important. So, there's not a whole lot I think we really need to dig into with the Chiefs today. There was some sloppy plays, some turnovers, some things they've got to clean up. They've been a little sloppy lately. I think they're at the point in the year now where it's just kind of keep everyone healthy, rest up, and get to the playoffs healthy. Can't have any of these key players going down. That would be absolutely devastating for the Chiefs if something were to happen. So, yes, while that number one seed is important, it's more important to have your guys healthy, I think. Because at some point in Patrick Mahomes' career, he's going to have to go on the road and play a playoff game. He has not done that yet. That's pretty remarkable, really. And I just think that the Chiefs are in a spot right now where, yes, the one seed is incredibly important, but is not as important as staying healthy. So, got the win against the Broncos, a bad team, just fired their coach. There's just not a whole lot I think we really need to dive into. I'm thinking big picture right now is more what the Chiefs are focused on, and it's all going to start Monday Night Football. Bengals and Bills. It's huge. It's absolutely huge for three different teams that have a chance to get this one seed in the AFC. Cincinnati could either be the 1 or they could be the 5. Like, it's not locked up yet. That is absolutely crazy. But that's just the way we are. The top half of the top 2 or 3 teams in this AFC are absolutely they're neck and neck. They're all right there, and it's competitive. And we'll have to see how it plays out with Baltimore. I do know that the Bengals end their season with the Ravens. So that'll be a huge game for the Bengals regardless of what happens tomorrow night. They're going to have to go win that game as well. So Cincinnati's got their work cut out for them. You go 0-2 down the stretch. If you're the Bengals, you're going on the road, and you're having to be the wild card. So they've got a lot to play for. I'd say they have the most to play for out of anybody in the AFC. Buffalo and Kansas City have already clinched their division. The rest of the AFC is kind of funny. Jacksonville at 8-8 is in the driver's seat in the absolutely dreadful AFC South. That's an interesting one there. So yeah, it's the Chiefs, they got what they needed to get done today. Win and move on. Same thing next week. Go beat the Raiders. You're going to have to win that game no matter what. Unless we'll have to see how the schedule plays out. I would assume the Chiefs would play in the afternoon in Vegas just because of the time. They flexed the last week of the schedule because they don't want anybody knowing their fate before they play their game. You know what I mean? So if there's 2 teams fighting for the same spot or 2 teams fighting for the division, they're going to play at the same time. So that way you don't want a team to know their fate going into the afternoon games. That's just not what they do. Same thing with the Sunday night game. What they usually do for the Sunday night game to end the year is if there's a head-to-head matchup to win your division, which all intents and purposes sounds like it's going to be Baltimore and Cincinnati playing head-to-head for that division, I would assume that would be the Sunday night game. Unless there's another division as well where there's a head-to-head to win it. That's usually how they do it. They want the Sunday night game to be basically a division winner or a winner-go-home type situation, and I would assume that's what they would do right there as well. So we'll have to see what time Kansas City plays. We should know, I think sometime tomorrow, what time the Chiefs will play on Sunday against the Raiders. I'm just going to double-check real quick and make sure they haven't announced a game time yet. I don't think they have. I would assume it would be in the afternoon. Maybe they don't flex that one. No, it's still to be determined. So it's likely going to be in the afternoon. It's likely going to be a 3 or 3:30 kickoff in Kansas City for the Chiefs and Raiders to end the season. All right, on to college football. Kansas State had Alabama in a pretty good spot to start that game. They get up 10-0. Deuce Vaughn had I think it was the longest run of his career, 80-some yards. Took it to the house. Just a spectacular football player he is. And then where I thought Kansas State was doomed was the 4th and 2 on the 2-yard line. And the Cats had already converted 2 fourth downs on that drive. So Kleiman, a lot of people were like, why aren't they maybe kicking a field goal there? It's because you got to score touchdowns to beat Alabama, especially after what we saw in the second half. Field goals weren't going to do you any good. You got to score touchdowns to beat a team that is better than you, more athletic. They've got the better quarterback. They've got better wide receivers. They're just all around better than K-State is. So I don't mind the aggressiveness for Chris Kleiman and Colin Klein making some of those decisions. They needed to score on that play. And he had the guy wide open, and he just overthrew it. Will Howard made a few mistakes in that game and didn't really play the cleanest game. But Alabama's really good on defense, and that's a tough team to beat. So I think you just tip your hats to Kansas State. It was a great year. Alabama is a college football playoff level team, even though they've lost a couple times and got left out. I told some of my buddies, I think Alabama, they might have beaten anybody in that college football playoff yesterday. They definitely would have been in the games. Alabama can clearly hang with those top 4 teams that we saw. They just didn't get selected. So hats off to the Cats and Chris Kleiman. They're going to have a lot of these guys coming back next year. We'll have to wait and see what Deuce Vaughn does. Obviously, if you're a K-State fan, you would love to have him back for another year. I do not know. That's still up in the air. I'd expect he'll make a decision whether or not he's going to jump to the draft or come back another year sometime in the next couple weeks. And we'll just have to wait and see what happens there. But great season for Kansas State. Lost a couple of games I think they shouldn't have. The TCU, the first one, obviously that's understandable. The Tulane was inexcusable. And then the Texas game, playing Adrian Martinez, the same thing. So I think if you're Kansas State, you sort of look at this season as what it could have been. But even if they had gone 11-1, made the college football playoff, I mean, we pretty much saw yesterday what it could have been. You would have run into a team like that is better. And I don't know how you look at this season if you're a Kansas State fan. Tweet me, ask me about it at Spencer Kietzman. Give me your thoughts if you think of this season as kind of a glass half full or glass half empty. Winning the Big 12, obviously a huge deal. And, anytime you win your conference, you take that season as an extreme success, and you don't ever take it for granted. Kansas State is the Big 12 champions, and they will hold on to that, even though yesterday was very, very disappointing. The TCU game here in Phoenix against Michigan was very sloppy. I mean, both teams had a bunch of turnovers. Michigan threw pick sixes like crazy. They threw 2 of them. That's why they lost. You throw 2 pick sixes in a college football playoff game, you're going to lose. Even though TCU tried multiple times to let Michigan back in the game. You watch that second half, the third and fourth quarter, TCU and Michigan, they were all completing bombs. I mean, just huge plays. I think these defenses in this game were absolutely gassed, and you could kind of see it. But I'm sitting here thinking TCU, okay, yeah, these 70-yard touchdowns and these big plays they keep having are great. They put points on the board. But I'm like, at some point, Sonny Dykes needs to run off like an 8-minute drive and keep Michigan's offense off the field to put this thing away. Because, I mean, both teams were just scoring at will. They weren't really gaining any ground. You know, at some point, when you've got a lead like that, you need to consider the clock and maybe, you know, cut back on some of these big plays. I know it's hard to say, and it's easy to do when your receiver's literally wide open without a defender within 15 yards. But at some point, I'm like, TCU really needs to give their defense a breather and put together a long drive to do this thing. And they ended up winning. It went down to the wire. It was a great game, the highest scoring Fiesta Bowl in history. And TCU's in the College Football National Championship game against the Georgia Bulldogs, who got off to a slow start against Ohio State. I was texting my dad. My sister's a Georgia grad. We were all in a group chat last night talking about this one, and Dad was basically like, look, these are correctable mistakes. There's, you know, Georgia is the better team. Even though I thought Ohio State, they're incredibly well coached. They've got a good quarterback. That's a good football team, and they gave Georgia all they could handle in that one. I mean, it looked like Ohio State was going to win it. They really did. And the kicker just whiffed at the end, like not even close. That was like a tee shot right off the toe of your driver, just a straight duck, hard left. At first I thought it was blocked because the ball was spinning like it was, you know, it wasn't end over end. It was spinning sideways. I'm like, did that Georgia guy get a finger on that? And the answer is no. He just whiffed it. Just a complete whiff. Georgia wins the game. They move on. This is going to be a fun college football championship game. I think we're going to see a lot of points in this one as well with Georgia and TCU. So that will be fun to watch. Looking forward to that. And hopefully the Bulldogs can give my sister a second straight national championship. All right, it's the weekend interview on Kevin Kietzman Has Issues. I'm Spencer, in for my dad this weekend. And joining me now is a guy that I guess I kind of still work at Arizona Sports 98.7, Mitch Vareldzis. I haven't been in there in a while. You know, the car gig is really kind of put a damper on my radio time. But Mitch is the producer.
I think you're still on payroll, so if that helps.
I actually am. I get emails all the time, and Maloney texts me all the time wanting me to fill in, and I can never do it, so I feel terrible. But so
you're still one of us then.
Mitch is the producer of the Burns and Gambo show. That's basically the flagship show here on 98.7 Arizona Sports here in Phoenix. They've been doing it for years. Gambo's been at it for years, but you've only been in the producer role, about 2 years now, I think, for that show, Mitch?
Almost 2 years. They put me in that role October of 21, so I'm coming up on the second year, or I'm in the second year, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and Mitch, you still host Arizona Sports Saturday. I used to be on that show with you. It was kind of short-lived. I think we did it for, 5 or 6 months maybe, and then I had to call it quits because you got to be able to sell cars on Saturday.
You and I kind of reignited that show.
It was dead
because it went dead for a few months. And then you and I, with the trust of our previous boss, Rod Lakin, were able to pick that back up. Mm-hmm. And now Steve Zinsmeister and I, carried the load for that into now this new year. Yeah, you know,
I do get to listen to it, and there are times where, obviously on Saturday, especially during football season when ASU plays, you're kind of bumped. And that's just the way it is. But you guys are doing great. Steve's great. And, I really enjoyed doing that show with you. We had a lot of fun with it, and maybe someday I'll be able to do it again, but not today. But anyways, Mitch is actually from Colorado Springs, and it's fair to say you're a Broncos fan. So I guess we can start with the Chiefs and Broncos today.
Let's put it this way: there's a reason you invited me on today.
Well,
of all days,
I wasn't trying to rub in the fact that Kansas City's won 15 straight over Denver. I believe it's the longest active streak in the NFL. The last time the Broncos beat the Chiefs was the year that Peyton Manning won the Super Bowl, right before he retired with Denver. That was the last year. That was 2015. It just goes to show, I've always thought of it this way, Mitch, especially with the AFC West and any division, really. It comes and goes for, each team gets a window, right? I mean, the Chiefs are obviously in the prime of their window. They've won this division now 7 straight years. Denver was the last team to do it before Kansas City went on their run. But you see it in the NFC West. The Seahawks had their run. The 49ers, it seems like they're sort of in the middle of their run right now. It happens. I mean, it just comes and goes, and you can't stay on top forever, can you?
I mean, turnover is so quick, and obviously a big part of that, as you and I both know, has been the man that has been under center for both of those teams. Of course, when Peyton Manning walked off into the sunset, it has been a literal revolving door in Denver, whereas Kansas City has had great success previously with Alex Smith, and then they just drafted the next generational icon that is Patrick Mahomes, and that has led to this absurd dominance that they've had, not just in the division, Spencer, but really in the conference itself. They've been to four consecutive, correct me if I'm wrong, 4 consecutive AFC championships. They've been to
this
two
year
of the
would
last
be
4
this year
Super
would be
Bowls.
4. This year would be 4.
This year would be 4.
I'm pretty sure.
But
yeah.
they've clearly held the mantle in the division and the conference that was first recognized by Lamar Hunt, the original owner of the franchise. So it's good for the sake of the sport that Kansas City is able to get back to this level. Obviously, from my personal perspective, I would like to see it come to its demise, but I know that's not happening anytime soon. And to bring it all home, the big part of that is the man wearing number 15, Patrick Mahomes.
That's 100% right. And I'm actually wrong. This year would be 5. When you win,
you
go to so many in a row, you just lose track. I'm just.
Well, don't get drunk off of it now.
So Patrick Mahomes has never played a playoff game on the road. Does that change this year, you think?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, not once.
Well, so there would be one possible way that would happen, right? And we're not going to know of course, until week 18, but we're really not going to know until tomorrow night. The two teams that are vying for that number 1 seed along with the Chiefs, the Bills and the Bengals, go head-to-head against one another. And if the Chiefs are looking to maintain that home field advantage that they've had since Mahomes has been their QB, they're going to be the biggest Cincinnati fans ever tomorrow night when those two take on each other Monday night.
Yeah, so basically how it sits right now is Cincinnati is still alive to get that number 1 overall seed in the bye. It's going to be kind of tough for them to do. They definitely have to beat Buffalo head-to-head. They do have a tiebreaker against Kansas City, but the Chiefs have the Raiders left. I don't see Kansas City losing that game unless it's meaningless, and the Chiefs are just
unless Jarrett Stidham plays the way he did again today.
I know, right? But yeah, Cincinnati has a fighting chance. It's very slim, but it can be done. Kansas City would have to lose, and Buffalo would have to obviously lose to the Bengals head-to-head. But you could have a 3-way tie there if the Chiefs were to lose, and I think Cincinnati would get the nod because they would end up having tiebreakers over Buffalo and Kansas City. But the number 1 seed is absolutely huge. I mean, that's you want to play at home throughout the playoffs. As of right now, it's Buffalo. They do have a tiebreaker over Kansas City. But you look towards the bottom of the conference. I can't figure out some of these teams in the AFC. The Dolphins lose again today. New England, obviously, they're sitting there at 8-8. You got Pittsburgh, who is, if you're listening, they're currently playing right now. They're tied with Baltimore.
This is the darling story of the AFC right now, is this Pittsburgh Steelers club, in my opinion.
Do any of these teams at the bottom, I mean, I know the Chargers have already clinched a playoff spot, and Baltimore has obviously clinched a playoff spot. Jacksonville is technically winning that AFC South division. What do you make of some of these teams?
I think Jacksonville's going to – I mean, their only game that matters is next week when they play Tennessee. And I think in the end, Jacksonville is going to take that thing because Tennessee is just – they're on their last leg. They lost Ryan Tannehill for the year. He was a big part of what makes that offense run. Malik Willis clearly has a lot more work to go in this league. Can Derrick Henry carry them? I don't know for how much longer. Jacksonville looked like a juggernaut today, albeit against Houston. But I think Jacksonville takes the division there. But what is interesting, Spencer, I don't know if you've mentioned it yet, neither Baltimore or Cincinnati have claimed that division in the AFC North. That one is still up for grabs, I believe. Separation by a game.
Yes, it is.
And then they play each other next week because Pittsburgh has Cleveland vying for their opportunity. So that division might come down to next week, especially if the Bengals lose and the Ravens win tonight against Pittsburgh. That would make things really, really interesting.
So, yeah,
as far as who's going to be 3 and who's going to be 5 in this playoff.
If you're Cincinnati right now, the 1 is still an option and the 5 is still an option.
Wow.
So yeah, the Bengals have two.
It's got to be nerve-wracking.
They have 2 huge games to end the year. They're not going to be sitting anybody. They're not going to be able to because they're going to be fighting for their division and the number 1 seed. Miami is one of those teams that I've always kind of been afraid of. I would hate to see them come into Kansas City and play the Chiefs in the playoffs? I just don't know anymore. I don't see it with the Dolphins, and
their offense fell off a cliff. Whether it's with Tua or without Tua, they just don't look like that same offensive juggernaut that they were for like the first 10 weeks of this season. I don't know what happened to them. Or they just figured out where defenses are starting to understand how their offense works, or is Tua starting to, go into fetal position a little bit, and he's starting to cower and disappear from that stalwart that he was all those early weeks.
Yeah, not only that, but Miami's defense has kind of fallen off too. I was really disappointed in the way they played against the Packers last week, who, by the way, Green Bay's been playing some really good football. I mean, they absolutely steamrolled Minnesota today. So with that being said, we can it's one of those things where
they're at win and they're in, Spencer.
I know.
Green Bay is now at win and they're in. How did we get to this point?
From that disaster that was at the beginning of the year for the Green Bay Packers, where obviously I know a lot of Packers fans that had given up in October. They were like, we're just done. Probably time to move on from Rodgers. We need to figure something else out here. And I'm like, well, okay. They were able to bench Rodgers and put Jordan Love in the game today. I mean, Green Bay's playing some good football, but also in the NFC, Minnesota, I've said all along that the Vikings are a fraud. And I've always, you won't get me off that train. They've won every game they've played this year by less than 7 points. They're the only team in NFL history, I think, to win 11 games in a single season by less than a score. That is absolutely remarkable. And then the games they've lost, they've just gotten blown out. The Cowboys blew them out. The Eagles blew them out. And obviously today, Green Bay just blew them out as well. Who do you think is a real contender? I know the Eagles lost today, so technically they haven't locked up that number 1 overall seed, but they should. All they got to do is win next week.
I think they'll be fine. I would be shocked if Jalen Hurts plays next week. I think at this point, if you're Nick Sirianni and the Eagles, you just want to get in, and you're in already and have been for weeks. And then you even get the extra week to make sure Jalen is fully ready to go if you somehow hold on to that 1 seed. I think it's in Philly's best interest to make sure Jalen Hurts is ready to go because he clearly makes that offense hum.
Yeah, so and I don't think that there's any way actually. So would a tiebreaker for the 1 seed go to a division record? Because let's say the Eagles somehow lose their last game, and the Cowboys beat Washington to end the year. They both finish 13-4, and I think they split with each other this year. So I'm wondering if that tiebreaker would go to a division record, and if that's the case, the Cowboys would have the better division record than the Eagles. The Eagles have lost twice in their division. So, or if it goes to conference record, they're both 8-3 in their conference. I don't know. That's interesting to me because technically that 1 seed is not locked up. Dallas is still in play for that. Obviously, Washington's going to be playing for a lot against the Cowboys next week. And with the Eagles' loss today, the Cowboys now have something to play for. If Philadelphia had won that game, the Cowboys probably would have sat everybody in their final game because they're not playing for anything. They can't win the division, but now they technically still can. So a lot of interesting things there in the NFC. What do you make of the 49ers? Obviously, you cover the Arizona Cardinals. You're very close to the NFC West. It's a team that you see a lot of and talk a lot about, especially on the shows that you're producing there. San Francisco, I think, is the real deal. I thought losing Garoppolo would be the end of them, but it's not.
Yeah, right. They've done this with their 3rd quarterback this year, and he might actually be the best of the trio. Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, former Perry High School star,
Gilbert, Arizona, and Iowa State Cyclone.
It's so great to see him succeed, but I think too you have to give credit to Kyle Shanahan for being able to continue keeping the offensive mold strong. And that Christian McCaffrey trade was clearly an absolute steal, the way they were able to pluck him out of Carolina. By the way, without giving up a 1st-round pick to get that dude, and he has completely made their offense the deadliest offense, I think, in the NFL. I agree with you 100%. I think there's a team to watch out for in the NFC, and the team that might be the one facing the Chiefs on the other side. Rematch all those years ago in Miami. Might see Kansas City and San Francisco again in Glendale this year.
Well, so pretty much all the divisions in the NFC are wrapped up, right? Except for the East. That's the only one. San Francisco won the West.
We're waiting on the East, correct? Yes.
And Minnesota clinched the NFC North, and Tampa Bay today at 8-8, I think, clinched their division over Carolina, who just got eliminated, and I think the Saints were also eliminated as well. So you've still got Seattle alive. Detroit is still alive too. They need a lot of help, and the Packers are winning in, right? I mean, They also need Washington. They need Washington. The Commanders eliminated themselves today. They did.
So I'm reading it here. Seattle has the tiebreak over Detroit based on head-to-head win percentage. I think that was because Seattle defeated Detroit earlier in the year. And then they also have the division tiebreak that was initially used to eliminate Green Bay, and Detroit wins that tiebreak over Green Bay based on head-to-head. So believe it or not, Green Bay has the easiest path to 7 because all they have to do is win because they have the advantage over Seattle.
They beat
Seattle the second best odds, Detroit the third, because Detroit would need to win and would need Seattle to lose to the LA Rams, who looked like the terrible Rams that they were again today to the Chargers.
Right.
So out of everything that has happened this year and the complete collapse that we've seen from guys like Russell Wilson and Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, in the end, we are still going to see Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers most likely in the playoffs for another consecutive season. It is astounding to me how they are able to pull this off.
Yeah, that really is something else. But I like I like the NFC. I like a few teams here. I think it's Philadelphia, San Francisco, and I wasn't sold on the Cowboys a couple of weeks ago, but I think that they're coming on strong. I think they're pretty legit. They have an excellent defense. The Giants, I'm not, whatever. No.
I think they play hard. I think they really, really got the pick of the litter at head coach. I think they won the head coach sweepstakes in the offseason, getting Brian Daboll away from Buffalo. He's completely made them look like a true competitor, to say the least.
Yeah.
He made Daniel Jones look good.
They've had times
Daniel Jones
this year,
was one of the highest scoring quarterbacks this year.
They've had times this year where they just haven't looked very good, though. I mean, I don't know if I'm sold on them. They're likely going to make the playoff. They already clinched a playoff spot, actually, so they're in. But as the way that this thing breaks down, if I'm a Kansas City Chiefs fan and I'm looking ahead towards the Super Bowl, because that's what Chiefs fans get to do now. They get to think about Super Bowls before they even play a playoff game. I don't want to see Philadelphia, and I don't want to see San Francisco. Everyone else I think I'd be okay with. But it's going to be fun. I mean, this is the fun time of year. I know a lot of people out there right now that don't have teams that are even contending or just kind of trying to wait to get to the off season. Are the Arizona Cardinals tanking? Like, I know this is something that you guys have talked about a lot on your show. Is this a thing in the NFL? Like, are they really trying to lose on purpose by playing whoever that quarterback was they farted out there today?
Well, I don't know. To use an example, is Lovie Smith a bad coach or is Houston just a bad team?
I think a little bit of both.
If you're looking at, I would agree there. If you're looking at that example, I think Houston very clearly wants to start over. They want the best possible pick they can get. Arizona, I don't think Arizona came into the season thinking that, we're going to have to start over. If you consider them extending both the head coach and the general manager in the offseason, eventually extending the quarterback, trading for his running mate at Oklahoma and Marquise Hollywood Brown, and adding that to a tandem that included DeAndre Hopkins, drafting a tight end in the second round. They expected this offense to live up to the level that it did last season. And instead, what we got was the team that everybody was afraid was going to be spit out there, and that was the team that lost, 6 of its last 7 last year following a 10-2 start. And lo and behold, this is what you got. And now you get to tack onto it all the stuff you didn't expect to happen. Like the general manager, Steve Keim, having to take a medical leave towards the end of the season. Kyler Murray tearing his ACL. He's likely going to be out for all of training camp leading into next year. And this football team, which can't keep players on the field, can't keep them healthy. And then at the same time, the head coach who was just extended can't coach.
Yeah.
He's not calling smart play calls given the personnel he's got. It makes absolutely zero sense But that's what happens. And you've got a 4-12 team now. And if they don't lose next week, it'll be an abject failure at this point. They should be losing.
Kingsbury's gone, man. Like, they can't keep doing this.
How does he survive? How does he survive?
He's terrible.
Like, if you're the owner of that team, how can you just sit back and say, oh, but remember when we went 10-2 with this guy? No.
Yeah.
You need to get someone that makes that offense work no matter who's under center.
The GM and the head coach.
Because I think that's the biggest flaw.
Both of them are gone. Keim and Kingsbury. Those guys are gone. They have to. I mean, there's
got to be.
You look at what Denver just did, obviously, going back to the AFC West, Denver wasn't afraid to fire their coach. I mean, that was just a quick one and done, not even a full season, obviously, and that did not work out. I mean, I don't know that it was all his fault, but he wasn't dealt a great hand, I don't think. They've got a leadership problem in that locker room, too, with Russell Wilson. I mean, there's something weird going on there, I think. Denver hasn't won a division game this year. That's part of the problem. You got to win division games if you want to compete in your division.
They're probably not going to either.
No, they got the Chargers.
I don't
left.
foresee them beating the Chargers next week. Even if the Chargers throw out Chase Daniel, I just don't foresee it.
No. So what's the process for the Broncos? I mean, obviously going to be looking to hire a coach. You've got a quarterback issue, even though you just paid him a ton of money. I'm wondering what's the first step in this rebuild this offseason? Once the clock hits 0 next Sunday, what are they doing?
I think if they haven't started looking for their next head coach, they're already falling behind. Mm-hmm. You came into this week knowing that you were going to have an interim head coach. So if you're not already trying to find the next head coach, then you're a step behind. So if they're not already doing that, they need to do that following week 18. Second, you need to have a one-on-one with Russ. And whether it's GM George Payton or whether it's the CEO Greg Penner or the both of them or all three of them, however it's done, they need to sit down and they need to address everything that they are concerned with in regards to Russ, whether it's his on-the-field play, whether it's his off-the-field attitude. The problem is that the best thing about Russ so far in Denver is what he's done for the community already. As we know, Russ is a former Walter Payton Man of the Year, so we know that giving to the community is part of his mantra, and that helps his persona or his image, I should say. But fans in Denver have been screaming and crying for a bona fide quarterback, and that's what everybody, including myself, thought they were getting this year. Mm-hmm. And that needs to be fixed first and foremost. Whatever it is, whatever it takes, that needs to be addressed as well. And then number 3, this might be the last chance for George Payton too.
Yeah.
He had a really good draft the first year, obviously getting Patrick Surtain, Javonte Williams, the unfortunate injury he had 4 weeks in, Quinn Miners, who's been a really great on the line, Jonathan Cooper, who he took in the really late rounds. And then I thought he had a pretty solid draft this year around, but the free agent signings, obviously the Russell Wilson trade, Randy Gregory has missed a majority of this season because of injury. He's kind of on his last leg too, and it's slightly been amplified by how poorly Russ has played, but it's been doubled down by the lacking production he's gotten from the guys that he's brought in the prior 2 off seasons. So I think that if those 3 things are heavily addressed and it's understood that they're all on equal playing field, then maybe it can give them motivation and focus to actually improve this team. At the same time, you still have to worry about the other teams in the division. As we've learned this year, Kansas City's not going anywhere for a while.
I don't think
Chiefs
the Chargers are
in.
either. If the Chargers could actually get a coach in there who can, we talked about this earlier today on the phone. They're misusing Justin Herbert. That kid's a talent. I mean, there's
100%,
no question about
100%.
it. If they ever figure that out, look out. I mean, I know the Chargers have had some injuries this year. They've had some pretty big injuries, and it's kind of a miracle that they've won 10 games and they're going to the playoffs. So, I mean, kudos to them. That alone is going to keep Brandon Staley employed there. They're not firing him. They're making the playoffs, right? But I just don't – I don't know. I don't know if I like the guy or not. I think if the Chargers can figure that out –
does it keep Staley employed?
It should. If they go –
Does it keep him employed?
Let's say they go win a playoff game. How can you fire him? I don't know.
Because Sean Payton says, hey, I want to come there.
Wouldn't they have to trade with the Saints to buy his contract back or whatever?
So yes, and it's likely going to require a first-round pick. But if you're the Chargers, think about the offseason that you just had. And yes, it got you to the playoffs, but you've also got this once-in-a-generational talent who's still on his rookie contract, I might add. Maybe go and try and get a ring before you have to pay him and do this whole rebuild, start over thing that most teams have to do after they pay the generational quarterback.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, the exception with Kansas City, as we know, Pat Mahomes got paid the year after he won, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
Went to the Super Bowl again. They lost. But then what happened in that offseason after they lost to Tampa? The restructure. They altered around some of the money that Pat Mahomes was getting because they knew we can't just win this thing with just him.
No.
We got to get him Mitchell Schwartz. We got to get him Orlando Brown. We've got to get him guys that can help keep him upright.
They drafted
that was the biggest flaw in that Super Bowl.
The center from Oklahoma they drafted has been phenomenal too. I mean,
I love Creed Humphrey.
Yeah,
he's awesome.
Humphrey's a player, man. They absolutely struck gold with that draft pick, and that's part of the thing too with the Chiefs' success is drafting quarterbacks, as you know. For the last 8 years in Denver, it's a crapshoot.
As I know.
I mean, you've gone through Drew Lock, you've gone through a lot of different guys that you've drafted, and it just doesn't work. It doesn't always work out. Obviously, the Chiefs saw something in Mahomes. That's why they made the trade to go get him. You had Deshaun Watson sitting right there as well. I mean, that was an option in that draft. It's hard to believe Mitch Trubisky was the first quarterback taken over those two guys, but that's just the way it worked out. But you just don't know. And Andy Reid has struck gold on a lot of draft picks. This Nick Bolton kid, the linebacker, is phenomenal. Second round out of Missouri. I mean, just an absolute player. The Chiefs have really done a good job drafting, and that's part of it. I mean, getting lucky with draft picks. These guys can actually play. It works out.
And a team is really, really good when last year you guys had Tyrann Mathieu. A team is really, really good when they can say, no, we don't need your services anymore because we found another guy that's just as good and is going to fill in for him. L'Jarius Sneed has been a great fill-in.
Of course.
I think that the Chiefs just understand what pieces are the most important to them. Quarterback, Chris Jones in the interior on the defensive line.
Frank Clark, they paid him.
Orlando Brown. Once Orlando Brown can fully get through a season, I would definitely say he's a big part for them. But I mean, it happened again this offseason. Tyreek Hill? No.
Goodbye.
Tyreek Hill? No.
Yeah.
We don't need you. Travis Kelce, he's all we need. He is all we need on this offense.
Well,
and Jerick McKinnon for the last 4 weeks for some reason. But
Kelce will retire.
They just know how to operate.
Chief. Kelce will retire at Chief. I can't see him going anywhere else.
I'd be shocked if he goes anywhere else.
Because if it comes to the point where he's got to re-sign a deal, he'll probably take a hometown discount. I mean, he's 34 years old, But the Tyreek Hill thing was one of those things where, they shipped him, they get a first-round pick, and they don't have to pay him the kind of money that the Dolphins gave him that he's not worth. I'm sorry. He wouldn't take a hometown discount to stay in Kansas City, and the Chiefs organization is, that's fine, bye-bye. We'll figure it out.
We'll just go get Trent McDuffie and George Karlaftis. It's okay.
I mean, seriously. So, I think if you're some of these teams that are in the AFC West, if you're the Raiders and you're the Broncos, you're on the outside looking in. Obviously, Kansas City and the LA Chargers are in a much better spot than those two teams are. So there's some work to do. But I think you kind of got to look at the Kansas City model. Maybe not extend some of these guys that, you're going to have to extend and stuff like that. Maybe figure out a way to fill some pieces other ways. But regardless, it's worked. And, the Brett Veach and Andy Reid thing is really clicking. They just have to get to another Super Bowl. Otherwise, I think you consider it a disappointment. But real quick, Mitch, let's talk some college football. Then we'll get you out of here.
What a weekend that was, right?
Well,
Holy
It
smokes.
started out with the Kansas State Wildcats just getting absolutely schmacked by Alabama. So that was tough.
We don't have to stay on that for long for your sake. It's okay.
It is what it is. I really didn't expect to win the game, but you would have liked to have seen it a little bit more competitive. Alabama, I think, would have beaten anybody yesterday the way they played. I mean, I think if you line them up against Georgia, Ohio State, TCU, or Michigan in the playoff, they're every bit, capable of beating those teams. Obviously, they're Alabama, but they, a lot of the thing about Alabama going into that game was, are they going to care? They're bummed they didn't make the playoff. They were the last team out or blah, blah, blah. Are they really going to care? It seemed like they did. and that team was really good. But TCU Michigan was probably the sloppiest, wildest, craziest display of just spurt plays. I mean, there were 21 points in the last 2.5 minutes of the third quarter or something like that.
Yeah. Absurd lack of defense in that second half.
You know, when I was watching that, I'm thinking for TCU's sake, I'm like, you know what? These big plays are great, but they really need to put together like an 8-minute drive here to seal this thing. And then they kept throwing 70-yard bombs. Like, you know, those plays are awesome, but it's not helping you in this situation. What'd you make of that one?
Well, fascinating because it's right down the street from where I am here in Glendale. So I could feel the aura of the specialness of that weekend. And I have a very close family friend who went to TCU, and I know he was amped up for this game. I got to give credit where credit's due. The Horned Frogs, just right out the gate, they knew exactly how they wanted to go at Michigan. Their defense made the very most of some very tight throws that J.J. McCarthy made early on in that game. And Sonny Dykes has those guys inspired, and it's awesome to see. And I saw a stat the other day on SVP's Sports Center that Sonny Dykes could become the first head coach, I can't remember since when, but one of the first to be in his first season and win the national title. Wow. That's on the line for Sonny. And that would be awesome for him, especially the way that he's turned Max Duggan into a legit quarterback prospect in the upcoming drafts.
No doubt. And it's hard to believe that Sonny Dykes was fired by Cal. Like, I mean,
yeah, crazy.
That one's a head scratcher there. And then
it shows you because Cal is not a very good football team.
Well, no, so. I understand. It's just like that guy can coach. I mean, there's no question about it. I don't think I could see him in the NFL in a couple years. If not after this year, I mean, who knows? If I'm the Denver Broncos, I might be calling that guy.
Maybe. I don't know if you saw this either while we were thinking of first. TCU was 200-1 odds to win the title coming into this year. Ooh. So they had a graphic of all the other 200-1 odds to win their respective title. I saw the Colorado Rockies and I chuckled because I knew that was.
I saw that too. I was laughing so hard. They were picked to finish 7th in the Big 12. I mean, that's just amazing. What did you make of Ohio State and Georgia? I thought Ohio State was better than I thought they would be in that game. That team's pretty well coached, and they've got a quarterback. They've got some nice players. Don't know what the hell that field goal was at the end to win the game. Ugh. Just that looked like literally like one of my tee shots where you hit it off the toe and it just goes hard left, like right off the bat. That was terrible, man.
So like all of my tee shots then.
I guess so, yeah. I mean, that was bad. He just whiffed it. Like, at first I thought it was blocked because the ball was moving sideways. I was like, did that Georgia guy get a finger on that or something? Nope. Just totally whiffed it.
It looked like it, yeah.
What'd you make of that one? That was that was a fun game too.
Yeah, 100%. Georgia's clearly got the pedigree. Georgia is that team right now. Could they go undefeated this season? Could they win their second consecutive? It's to be seen, but very clearly, Stetson Bennett's a winner. Stetson Bennett is a playmaker. Stetson Bennett is that dude.
It's just so average.
All the other
He's so average, and I love it. I mean, he
gets the job done.
He's just a guy, you know. All right, Mitch Vareldzis of 98.7 Arizona's Sports. You guys changed the slogan. You're the local sports leader now, I think is what the tagline is.
No more 98.7 in the title. We're Arizona Sports, the local sports leader.
The local sports leader.
It's the new branding.
That's the new branding. You got to refresh it every now and then. I completely understand that. So, thanks for coming on, Mitch. I know you got a big week coming up on the Burns and Gambo show. I assume Gambo's back in town from wherever the hell he was. I don't know, but I know you guys were scrambling to find a host the other day. So, But hopefully things are back to normal. We'll let you get out of here, dude. Thanks for coming on, and we need to meet up and catch up sometime. Hopefully I'll get into the station shortly, and I look forward to seeing you, man.
Absolutely, Spencer. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.